No problem. Take your time.
Let me check. Yes. Okay, my mic is much better. Okay. I could see on the little like stats that my mic was like not even registering. So it was
Uh,
yeah. Um like I could see it moving a tiny bit, and I was like, this isn't, obviously that's not going to work. But I figured out what the which which input it was. So now I'm there, and yes, and the live video is on, so yay. Okay. All right. So got to dress a little bit more feminine this week. That's awesome. Yay. Um, I'm trying to like I still have morning voice because this heat wave has irritated my throat, and so this is not. I don't feel like this is my normal voice because this feels a little strained. Yeah.
no, I understand. I'm in the same way. Like my sinuses have just like they've been going nuts ever since this heat wave started.
Oh man, yeah, I'm so ready. I think it's tonight that it's supposed to start, like hopefully raining, and then tomorrow it'll rain, and that will hopefully be the end of the heat wave for a while.
We can
uh,
hope.
yeah, I went out with my friends yesterday for the whole day and took my inhaler like a lot. Like I noticed it definitely, and I'm kind of new to understanding my asthma and how it uh, comes out. Yeah.
I definitely hope it alleviates soon. Because
Yes.
God knows it's not. I don't think it's gonna get any better. So, but I do hope.
Yeah. Well, like,
But I just,
I mean, luckily, very fortunate for me. I have asthma that's triggered by something. So I found it out by riding a bike and realizing that I should not be wheezing after riding a bike, mostly downhill. So
mm,
yeah, so it's exercise induced, and then I'm like, oh, and also weather induced and laughter induced. Okay, all right, I got it. All right, and just other like little things where I'm like, oh, is this a part of it? Like I forgot to take my inhaler before I went to the gym one time, and my um, my sinuses really really hurt, and I was like, this is painful. How is this a part of this? Like, yeah, okay, well, I mean, I guess that's good to know.
yeah, no. I've seen it like happen. I'm allergic to tree pollen, so like
Mm,
add that plus exercise plus the air quality has just been
that's not
so
good.
terrible. Like
Yeah.
I don't think anyone's having any kind of reasonably good time right now.
No one's
So
having fun right now. Like, yeah, I mean,
yeah,
that's that was like kind of valid before. Yeah. So, all right. So on to the second time we are talking about MC Hammer.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Because
God.
good old technology failed us twice now, so we got it
At
again
least twice.
at
Yeah.
least twice. So I mean, luckily we have like a better what is that called, like setup now. So like we can understand that there are some things that what's going on with our technology. We can understand that part. So
We
that's
also
good.
I think have a better like context to come from. Like we know
Yeah.
what we talked about before, so we know how to
Yes,
you know
we know how to. Yeah.
work it out and all
Yep.
that.
So I've been listening to the Scott Patterson "I'm All In Gilmore Girls" podcast, and so they go over this pop culture stuff, and they'll always be like, "Okay, just a pop culture note: MC Hammer was a megastar in the early 90s on his song, oh my gosh, not Hammer Time, oh my god.
Can't touch this?
Can't touch this. Yeah, you can't touch this. And it's not even spelled out. Yeah, it's a you can't touch this. I was looking up his songs and I saw that he had a bunch that I'd never heard of, and I didn't realize that he was not the actual singer on Too Legit. So he was a featured artist on Too Legit to Quit, which I was like, wasn't that one of his firsts? You know, like maybe that's how he like kind of stepped up to his fame, is Too Legit.
I don't know. Unfortunately, like my exposure to MC Hammer, unfortunately, has been through his, I hate to say it, like one hit wonder song. So
Yes.
unfortunately, just it's kind of coming from that point of view, and it's also coming from like a research point of view. So I can't say too much. But
I gotcha.
in terms of his music, I mean, the man was prolific to say the least, and
he was. Yeah.
Like he definitely is enthusiastic about not just business, but also just the current state of music as it is, and just how it's developed. I think he's definitely. I'm fairly certain he's learned from his past mistakes, which is to say, the mistakes of the '90s in general, which is in excess, which is probably one of the better. God damn it, brain.
Like
I can't remember who next song.
Yeah. I mean, and also like what you will call it. I think that with this we saw kind of the same thing that happened to Vanilla Ice, where like he's like Vanilla Ice had some of the same like things happen where it was like, oh, you know, like he seemed kind of like a one hit wonder, and like I think he even had a doll too. And MC Hammer definitely had a doll, and a cartoon and a bunch of other things. And it's kind of like mega fame. Let's make sure we get everything out of this person, you know. And I'm guessing like a whole amount of like of money that everyone wanted, obviously, and then the crash, you know, of like they're not cool anymore because they got played out. Like, yeah, they've kind of got oversaturated.
Well, I think the issue being is that around like the 80s, like I think the 80s maybe less so than this, but then again, I remember like Tiger Beat magazine and all that being a thing. So my point is, there's a lot more like visibility when it comes to, I want to say like star exposure, but more star abuse. I think is probably the best term I can come up with, because you really look at like the lines that you're seeing in terms of like media exposure, how things have like publicized and all that, and it comes across like the people behind the stars really didn't know how to treat people, but more specifically, they didn't know how to hide it pretty well. I mean, I have a feeling nowadays they're a lot more creative when it comes to hiding exposure of like, you know, their stars mistreatment and everything. And I think that's probably one of the biggest factors when it comes to the overexposure of the '90s, where I don't think they knew how to stretch it the way they do now. And I still don't think they stretch it fairly well, but back in the '90s, like you couldn't go really far enough to see like something exposed to an almost cartoonish degree, where you were seeing, like we said, dolls, action figures, cartoons, comic books.
Clothing lines.
Yeah. Well, I mean, clothing lines are a little less. I want to say disastrous. Like it depends really on the market and a few other factors.
Yeah.
But that said, like it's still one of those avenues where it could easily just tank, like if you're not careful.
Right. Like, yeah. And I feel like again that like the market was oversaturated with MC Hammer. And he bought that house in the Fremont Hills.
He still owns.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't realize he still owned it.
You
I thought.
might. I don't know. I have to
Oh,
look it
okay.
up.
I thought that was like that went out with the bankruptcy, and he lives in, to my knowledge, Tracy, California now, which is not far from Fremont, but you wouldn't necessarily. I mean, I guess you would have a place in, yeah. But like it was, I mean, it was luxurious, but also seemingly kind of obnoxious. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the main thing you could take away from it is obnoxiousness.
Yes.
It it's such a prevailing thing, and I don't think, like I said previously, I really don't think they knew what they were doing when it
Yeah.
came to just how to like expose their stars or their content effectively to maximize long term investment. And that's the problem with a lot of
Right.
these like production companies and everything. They lost so much. Well, I mean, I can't even say that because they made back their money, but they made it back on the backs of their artists.
Yeah, they
So
did.
that's the real like
Yeah.
tragedy of it is that yeah, the people behind them still made their money, but the stars got completely screwed.
Yeah.
And but again, that's still a failure on the part of the support staff, and that's what they're meant to do is support them. I mean, we
Yeah.
saw with Vanilla Ice, like he didn't know what he was doing; he just wanted to make music, and
Yep.
his production company as well as his agent and everyone else, they completely screwed him on
Yeah, they did.
so many levels.
Yep.
So it really does teach like the classic lesson of you really gotta be careful when it comes to trusting someone with your art.
Yeah.
And I think that's like one of the bigger lessons that people can take away from what happened to these artists.
Yeah, definitely. And I think this was one of the first times that I remember fast fashion. Going into like a huge store that like a friend of the family owned, and it was all like, I know we call it hammer pants, but I'm like, I believe they are harem pants.
Yes.
Yes.
Like the term parachute pant, it's actually harem
yes.
pants.
Yeah, parachute pants as well. Yeah. That like, they that had all these harem pants, and I just imagine that there were like a lot of people just like trying to get them out as quickly as they could. Just from a sewing perspective, they are very easy to make.
Yep.
Like if you're really good at sewing, they probably take between 30 and 45 minutes, just like straight seams.
I mean,
No
I'd have
pocket.
to ask my wife.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, yeah.
She's like like pretty good seamstress.
Gotcha. Yeah. So you can definitely ask her. And then like, the other stuff was like the spandex, the stretch, like, tops and like shorts, and that was basically what this big space was just the harem pants and the spandex, and it was, I remember going in there and I think getting a pair of parachute pants, and that was that, like, but it just, there was so much, and it just seemed like, I think about it now and I'm like, okay, that just seemed excessive for like, yes, the town had like 100,000 people in it, but like how many of those people were really into this particular, like, or yeah, this in particular, because like that just doesn't seem like, it doesn't seem like a lot of people in that area would have worn these pants. maybe spandex. Yeah.
I think MC Hammer knew what he was doing.
Yes.
Because listening to the man talk and reading interviews of him, he is a good businessman. He knows. Yes. Even today, he still champions like fashion and all that. And I think he even still champions wearing harem pants and everything. Like he is not shy about that aspect of it. So again, like this isn't just me reading as like the clues as I can follow them,
right?
But it still seems like the way that parachute pants and all those like spread out is they were trying to latch on to a market and milk it as hard as possible, as fast as possible for a quick profit.
Yes. And I mean, I think that that's like the root of like fast fashion as well. It's like, find the market, find what they want, make the clothes that this market will definitely want, make as much money as you can, and like, yeah.
like I think business in general back then was all about like return investments as fast as possible. Because
Yes,
especially if you look at media in general, like I think they almost like they thrive on that kind of market in
they
certain
do. Yeah.
degrees. But I mean, that's not to say like that's the norm because looking into the practices of musicians and like markets and agents in the limited capacity that I can. Um, they typically, it depends on the contract, but they typically like need to make that first album a hit.
Yes.
Otherwise, like you can't really get much above it. But once you have that hit, like it really would depend on the choices of the producer as well as the production company in general, how they profit off of it. It's either going to be a slow build or you're basically at their mercy, and depends on what the mood of the person in charge is. And unfortunately, I just think the people in charge didn't have the best interest of not only the artist but the IP in general, because all they wanted was to see how much money they could get as fast as humanly possible.
Yes.
And I'll keep saying that repeatedly because that's the truth of a lot of these artists and a lot of different franchises in the 90s is they just lost viability because of this oversaturation of product. And again, this is part of the 90s. Like you said, spandex and all this
Yes.
fun stuff. It's part of it. Like that's part of the excess. But it if you look at it from a business perspective in that kind of mentality, does not work. Because yeah, you'll get a short-term investment and it'll be good, but you'll completely ruin it unless you have something. There has to be some kind of core to the IP to really bring it home. And Vanilla Ice's hit really strong what's the best way to put it? Like grabbing point is that he loved his music.
Yes.
And he still maintained that, and he was still a very dynamic presence on stage. MC Hammer, he's a very like intelligent human being, and I think that is what really saved him in the end. Is that he decided to take the power onto himself, and educated himself from all that.
Yeah. Yeah. And it seems like I guess both probably no. I was gonna say expanded in the same way, but I don't think that Vanilla Ice ever had a cartoon. Like maybe he did, but MC Hammer definitely did, which is really interesting to think of. Like, and it's funny because like he definitely has a look, but like I mean, Vanilla Ice also had a definite look. So like it's such a weird, like in my mind I'm like comparing the two and I'm like, they both have this like 3 lines shaved on the side of their head. Like maybe that just wasn't like a popular thing to do, and then that became probably super.
I don't know, like in terms of like hairstyles, I think it does lend to them following what's trending in the market.
Oh,
so
gotcha. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah,
I think that's more. I think that more follows. How do I put this? The flow of the 90s. Like that's what really it takes in. So to answer the question about parachute pants,
Yes.
about 30 minutes if they have a pattern.
Oh, gotcha. Yes. Yeah. Yep.
So, but yeah, like we were saying, these styles that these artists developed partly is they took it to themselves. Like MC Hammer definitely studied and definitely found his way of dancing, and ensuring he had a style on. And Vanilla Ice in the same kind of pattern. He was a phenom when it came to beatboxing, street dancing, and everything else.
Yeah.
And I think the styles lend to that. And but I think those were choices made by the production company in order to thrive on that. Except for when it comes to MC Hammer, I think MC Hammer's choices were still on his own.
Oh, gotcha. Like
because I think otherwise,
yeah.
Sorry.
Like he might have had some more like artistic choices, or like I always feel like he was a little bit older than Vanilla Ice, so it's like, oh, he kind of knew something a little bit different or better, than like just to be young and really into music, you know.
Yeah, like I said, like I was looking up before, Vanilla Ice definitely in the beginning, where we had like the image of Vanilla Ice and had like the dolls and everything.
Mm-hmm.
That era was definitely influenced by his managers and
Mm-hmm.
everyone else, and I think that unfortunately just really, um, that really salted everything.
Yeah.
Like I don't like. I think the worst term is to say salty earth, but if you look at like his viability after like '93 or
Mm.
'92, I'm not sure the specific date. It really did just like they ground it to the floor
Right.
as much
Right.
as they could.
Yeah. And yeah, it was just one of those things where it's like, yeah, this isn't cool anymore. Like, I'm done. I'm done. You know.
Well,
Um,
I think the interesting part is like the reaction of people to like something that is very played out, and I think we
yes.
talked about this where the knee jerk reaction of someone is to like, oh god, I'm sick of this, so it's like it's not cool, forget about it. Like it's a
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
I,
It's
I I mean, don't get me wrong. There's devoted fans, and I'm
mhm.
glad that there's devoted fans to this
Oh
stuff
yeah, me
because it
too.
really does show that there is love for these people that actually put effort into a lot of their stuff. And even the most insipid um, music can have its fans, and that's perfectly fine. There's no reason to not you know to really question that. But my thing is like enduring fandom and enduring styles of like that, and in fact, a growing fandom really shows that these people really did put a lot of work and effort into their art,
Hmm.
and I think it's gratifying to see that in like in a case like Vanilla Ice and MC Hammer, they got that chance afterward to become bigger than the white processed cheese of mass
Yeah,
media.
yeah, that's very true. And for whatever reason, I'm thinking about like, um, who has that kind of like, almost superstar, like level at this point in the world, and I'm like, I think it's JoJo Siwa. It's like I can almost see the same vein, in JoJo Siwa as I can see in MC Hammer. And like it's definitely a style. It's it's a phenomenon, obviously.
Unfortunately, I have to go through like websites for this because I really don't know who's like topping the charts right now. But then
Oh,
again, like
gotcha. I mean, she has dolls. She has, uh, she's like, I mean, definitely shirts. And just like all of these, uh, I think that with her though, with JoJo Siwa, it's a little bit different because her target audience is so young. So like, it's very possible that there will be like long term fame for her, and
oh
there
god,
has been.
her.
Yes, yes.
Sorry,
Long
I just looked a
term,
picture up.
yeah, long term success for her because of how young the her target audience is. Yeah, like I've known people with kids who have like gone to the concerts, and they go to Target to go find something small for their kid to like wear to the concert, and it's like everything is sold out because like JoJo Siwa is coming into town. You know, like
So
it's
just to be clear, I was peripherally aware of this person
oh
based off
gotcha.
of like a Disney Channel show, like very far back in like the past, like just
Right,
I can't
right.
remember where like exactly, but I remember like looking at like the side ponytail thing. I remember this
Yes.
being a Disney Channel show. I didn't think she became the next like Hannah Montana or anything like that, and
Oh,
just
gotcha. Yeah. Oh
like
no,
that's
she
that's
is.
really the vibe I get is just
Yes.
like
Yeah. I mean, she's out of favor a little bit right now because she came out, and so that obviously just like, oh my gosh. I mean, this definitely goes back to the '90s too, where it's like, how dare you not be a role model, a proper Christian role model for my kid?
uh,
And yes, I mean, MC Hammer at least has that part. Like, he is a good Christian role model. But
but I
like,
thought Christians didn't like rap.
what's that?
I thought Christians didn't like rap, so what's the deal?
Right. So what's the deal? But I guess his was, not about degrading women and the gang life, I guess, or the gangster life.
I mean, there's plenty of rap that doesn't do that, and yet, like, a lot of people, like, I harken back to the days of, like, the rampant censorship and, like, all the
Oh
government
yeah, because of because of
oh,
that
there
Tipper
used to
Gore
be,
thing.
there was
Not
some,
Tipper Gore.
XYZ, and,
Yeah, Nancy
like,
Reagan
and then
thing.
it's like, yeah, the Nancy Reagan kind of, like,
Yeah.
I don't want to say, give me 1 second,
Yeah, I remember we had to look this up last time too, where it was like, what is the name of that, like, her organization that now has the explicit lyrics on it? Yeah.
give me 1 second, because I apologize, audience, but it's one of those things where it's like, oh my god.
Yeah.
Like it's definitely, like, if you ever, like, watch clips of, like the, the the old censorship, like, bands and, like, all the people who are against, like, heavy metal
Yeah.
and, like, video games and all that stuff, and then right now you'll still roll your eyes to this whole thing, and it's like, oh my god, why? And then, like, you see artists fighting for their rights and all that.
Yeah.
It's and every single person that mentions these topics knows it only A, because their secretaries told them about it, and B, that they have, like, they saw commercials about it. At no point have the people who, like, fought the immoral fight against, for your children's futures and all that horse shit. At no point did any of them actually play it or get anything other than just that, and it's the most vapid thing that
It
humanly
really is.
possible.
It's like an empty thing. Like, oh, we saw this. Yeah, as you're saying. Oh, we heard of this person and we didn't like the rumors about them. So explicit lyrics. Like, did you? But like, how did you know that? Like, but what? You know,
you went
like,
through, like, yeah, like, you only know this for, like, what, like, 5 minutes of, like you don't listen to it. You're not a fan of it. So what the
exactly.
hell?
So what is it? What does it mean to you anyway? If like someone somewhere is selling a CD that had like selling a CD of maybe explicit lyrics, but like to a fan, like yeah. Also, I mean, are there parents who like really didn't know that like what was it, NWA, like had bad lyrics? Like they were just like, oh, okay, yeah, no, you can listen to this music, but that I just go listen to it.
Again, I have to harken back to, like, my favorite song that, like, perfectly exemplifies this, and that's Wasp Harder Faster, where, yeah, absolutely it sounds like a sex song, but when you actually know the history of it, you hear something completely different, and you hear a complete attack against, and I found the name of this, the PMRC, the Parents Music Resource Center, which, give me 1 second, I'm pretty sure is no longer a thing. Yeah, I don't think they've done anything like since.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, like and also they really can't because we don't have CDs anymore. Like, what are they gonna do? Go through all of the internet music? How are they gonna do that?
I don't know. Like, apparently, oh god, this is hilarious. So, like, apparently the PMRC had a list of, like, the 90s songs. I don't know if it's just 90s songs, but, like, the 90s, or, like, the songs that they considered the most terrible, or, like, the most, like, oh, this is something, Prince is on there, Sheena Easton's on there, Judas. Well, okay, Judas Priest, but whatever. Like, these are songs that deal with adult topics, so it's like,
right.
Still Lauper's on here, for God's sake. Like, these bands now are like, a lot of these bands aren't considered mainstream, and more importantly, a lot of these songs are taken for not just the content of, like, sex and everything, which is, again, what the artists want. They don't want you to take it on straight on the straight words of it. It's not meant to be taken literally a lot of these ways. Could they be? Absolutely. If you're looking at it very, very surface level. But they're not meant to be. You're meant to think about it.
right,
about the
and
the
yeah,
poetry of it.
yes, definitely the poetry of it. Yeah, and I'm like, this is probably a bigger topic for a different day. But
Yeah,
like I just like I think fully listened to Stan by Eminem again, and like I mean it's been a couple of years since I've listened to it. Like I knew the gist of it. You know, like the obsessive fan who's like, why didn't you answer my my not email but like my letters, like, you know, and like you didn't sign this, you know, an autograph for my brother, and like I'm so mad, and then, you know, kills his girlfriend, and, you know, is like, but, you know, we're one of the same because like what do we call it, because we've suffered through the same things, and like, you know, I cut myself too, and all of this stuff. And like he's like, when Eminem finally like responds, he's like, hey, I've been busy, whatever, like, you know, I like say that I do that stuff as like an expression. Like I don't actually do that stuff because like I'm trying to use my words instead of use my actions. And like, you know, you got to get help for like thinking that the things that I say in my songs are like true. And, you know, and I'm like, yeah, that's one of those things where it's like the artistic license is definitely there, and expression, obviously. And so like I know that, yeah, definitely throughout the 90s there was this like thing like, you can't say you killed your spouse and put them in the trunk of the car. Well, Dixie Chicks did it. Like, what's the difference between Dixie Chicks and Eminem, you know, other than that, like, you don't like one of them? Guess which one?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
And I think that's the thing, is partially it's favoritism and it's lack of context. It's
right. Yeah, without the
There's so
context,
many
it's like,
levels
oh
to
my
it.
god, like both of these bands, like they like, one is making fun and the other one is like, no, I fucking did it. Like I just stabbed the bitch, you know. And like, oh, okay, like, so this must be a true thing. It's not a true thing. Like neither of them are true. Come on now, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I just I find it really interesting that the people that are large, like the loudest voices and the largest crowd of this are the ones that either listen to it the least or
Right.
have the lowest context possible
Oh
to
yeah.
be able to appreciate it. And
Yeah.
it's constant throughout, like not just the 90s, but just the prevailing
Oh
decades
yeah.
since. The ones that are going to scream the loudest are the ones that don't know what the hell they're talking about, and that
It's
is
true.
especially true for Vanilla Ice, especially
Yeah.
true for MC Hammer, and especially true for a lot of different subjects.
Yeah.
Because again, just because you can scream the loudest, okay, go be in a heavy metal band,
Yeah.
blow your lungs out for all I care.
Right.
Congratulations, you finally done something worthwhile with that screeching. Because
Right. Right.
otherwise, all you're doing is making things worse, and
Right.
not in the way you want.
And like you're not educating yourself. You're like, you know, pleading basically others to be ignorant, and like this just doesn't, like it has an end. It doesn't work, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what I think like comes back to what we were talking about when it comes to um the way people like treat media, and I think that's the way it comes about, where people usually will have a surface level appreciation for it because it's so popular, but then they'll just absolutely destroy it, which means, okay, so I guess it doesn't mean that much to you. So, but oh God forbid, you tell that to someone, or like you tell them, like, what? So now I can't like it? Like, oh, you can like it all you want, but I'm not gonna touch it. But it's totally not cool.
Oh yeah.
Like
Well,
it,
see, now
it
we
speaks of
understand that as a microaggression. You know, you can like it all
yeah,
you want. I think it's stupid. Okay, that's a microaggression. Like that's no.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I also see it as like a need to pull people into your way of thinking. Like that's the
Yes.
way I can kind of
Oh yeah,
perceive it. Is that
definitely a guilt
it's
trip.
definitely a conditioning kind of methodology where you're trying to like convince people. And again, like that it's not inherently wrong, because I mean, a lot of the times, like you listen to podcasts or something like that, you're trying to hear differing opinions, or you're trying to hear like another side of the argument and
Yeah.
all that. But the idea is that with those kinds of arguments, they're usually so superficial, or it's just based on knee jerk reactions, or just you know your lack of them that it just, okay, so why should I listen to you again?
Right,
Like, you're
right.
just flip-flopping between different subjects, or you're flip-flopping between different artists that you really like, but I guess you don't. And, like, the thing that amazes me is the people that devote themselves so hard to it, but then just drop it in a second.
Oh
Like,
yeah, yeah.
because it just feels like, okay, so
Like,
you're
so
gonna
you
crash
didn't
and
really
burn?
care about that. Like, you just wanted to kind of control other people and whether or not they actually liked it. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And that's what I think it is. It comes down to is they wanted to have their own little, like, bubble
Mm-hmm.
to really, like, stay within their sphere of influence and, control some kind of, like, way of themselves. But that said, I think it's evolved since then. And again, we can go into another topic and talk about it. But the point I'm saying is, we see this kind of behavior now in internet terms, because, like,
Oh
there's,
yeah,
like, groups on
definitely.
Facebook or Reddit posts
Yeah,
or Twitter and all that, where it becomes groupthink, and it's just on a much larger scale.
it is. Yeah.
So it's
And
just interesting to see that.
I remember feeling this way fairly recently, and I just remembered what it was about. It was about Travis Scott. And the unfortunate, which we'll call it, like like the overcrowding that happened at the Houston Astrodome, right? That where
Mm.
like people died at his concert because they couldn't receive medical attention, right away, and there was like a kind of a push towards the front of the stage, and all of this stuff, and then like that was kind of forgotten about, and I remember being a little bit upset because like he was still touring after that, and Live Nation was still supporting his concerts after all of that. And the fans were like, we don't give a shit if you guys don't like him. Um, we're going to continue to watch him because we like his antics. We like that he doesn't like that he breaks rules. And like we like his over the top concerts. We're not going to stop. And that was kind of like, people are like, well, why doesn't anyone care? It's like, well, because no one cared about Travis Scott before this happened. Like the mainstream did not give a shit. And now you have like people who are, probably like 18, 19, 20 who are like, no, I'm good. Like this is our jam. You guys don't get it. We're fine.
Yeah, I think this kind of thing definitely separates out a lot of the, like, it separates out, like, who really, like, cares about a thing on a surface
Right.
level and who cares about it genuinely,
Right.
because this definitely screams of, like the loudest people in this obviously were the people who just never listened to a single
Right.
thing on Travis Scott.
Right. And they're
And
like, don't listen to his music. Well, I wasn't fucking listening to it to begin with. Like, how am I supposed to hold him accountable for what he did? Like what happened at his concert? Like, this is also like a whole system thing. It's not just him,
yeah, like, he's not the one that, like,
Right.
he didn't personally hold people in there
Right.
or personally, like, set things up. Like,
Right.
the failure was a trickle down thing.
Right.
Like, it went from, like, the venue and everything else. Like,
Yes,
if you're
it
gonna
did,
hold people, like, if you're gonna do this,
Right.
hold the people directly responsible accountable.
And
I
that's
get
why
it,
I
it's
was
easy to,
mad at Live Nation for continuing to have his concerts and to like sell the tickets for it and advertise. And I'm like, you guys are the problem. Not this guy who's like, I don't give a shit about rules. Like, okay, fine, don't give a shit about rules, but also don't kill people. But like also don't have a like there's a system, it seems like it's malfunctioning,
well, I mean, it's also a growing thing of, like, people becoming a lot more dissatisfied, and we've seen it, like,
Right.
concerts now and, like, live venues and everything
Right.
that have this
It
kind of
has to
issue.
go like, yeah. And
But
the
again,
artists feeling
this is,
like they have to go bigger and bigger and bigger, and like because I know like I like Timmy Trumpet. When I watch videos of like Timmy Trumpet concerts in other countries, it's a huge laser show. It's this whole experience at this concert, which like again really draws me in. However, I am also an introvert, and I do not want to be around that many people. I also don't want to
yeah.
have to deal with lasers and a light show. So like I get to just be like, hey, that looks really cool. But like I have a feeling that it's not as interesting or wonderful like in the United States because there are a lot of rules. But then like if if those rules aren't followed, of course they can, like kind of push the rules, I guess, and like make it a more interesting concert.
Yeah, and what I was trying to say was, like we see this trend growing now of like musicians having like a bigger there's a more difficult time in them trying to hold together their concerts as well as everything around them, but that's also like the issue of like the world in general is having a much bigger issue on that. And I think this can be something that we can look at like the 90s as like a contrast to, because the 90s had a similar like I wouldn't say feel where there was a lot of excess and a lot of like I don't want to say arrogance, but definitely a lot of people think they know what's going on. And I think the idea of it right now is that I think people need to really step back and look at how we behaved then so that we can behave better now.
Right. But I mean, this is one of those things where I'm like, I feel like right now the United States is in a 20-year cycle. And this is, it might even be longer than that. It might be a 30-year cycle. And we're seeing that again, where it's like, oh yeah, so here's all the things that led up to to a war, to a recession, to just general unhappiness, and like I feel like the 2000s became very serious, and like yes, a lot of people did have to be serious during the pandemic, but I think also we have had so much laughter and other things just being like, what was that? Oh God, let me find a meme for that. And making fun of it. But I have a feeling like probably something's going to happen where it becomes like we all become very serious again and just go, nah, shit, well, this is fucked up. I don't.
Well, my thought is, and looking at the contrast of the 90s to kind of like get a better idea of it, like the artists then were stronger because of it now. Their adversity definitely pulled through in this. I think the problem being from the 90s up to like 2017, I think we said this before, there was like a bubble, that there was something like missing, or there was like a lack of some kind of like deep cultural significance that was really prevalent. I think we're seeing a reaction to that now, where everyone is just really trying to like I think there's a lot of disenfranchisement, and unfortunately just there hasn't been a good outlet for it. And I think that is what we're seeing now, in that everyone's trying like hell to just grasp onto something. Like grasp onto like whatever straws they can and feel good about themselves. Because I mean the isolation has definitely affected it. There's definitely been just like this overwhelming sense of like hopelessness and just like I guess hopelessness is probably just the best word, and people need some kind of counterbalance to that. And unfortunately, right now, the only outlets we have are the ones, well, like it's just the internet, and unfortunately, it's just outrage culture and cancel culture are just like what we have. And I think what we're seeing is a lack of some kind of strong, like cultural arc. And I think like the 90s had it, the 80s had it, the 70s definitely had it. There was this viable feeling that like the 90s had its identity, and the 2000s and I think the 2000s on has lacked that to an absurd degree. And I think we're just seeing that there has to be some kind of cultural change, or at least some kind of cultural hook to really bring us together. And like the 90s, I think the cultural hook for that was, as bad as it sounds, excess. Was just learning the limits of excess.
Yes, the limits of excess. Yeah.
I think that's the best way I can put it.
Yeah. Oh, I think we were talking about recessions, right? Like there hasn't been a recession since 2008.
Well, I mean, there's arguments to be made on that, but
yeah, I mean, definitely, yeah. And I'm just like, well, we haven't had a recession. Yeah.
Well, I think.
Yeah. But I mean, we probably did have a couple of dips there, because I'm like, yeah, there has been.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, here's the way I see it, and like the 1930s is the best example. We had the depression, but we hit the floor.
Mm.
Like that's the difference, I think, between the recessions that we're seeing now and those that we saw before. And again, there is a difference between a recession and depression, but
Right.
I think what the difference between then and now is people are holding on to like some kind of life support system now.
Yes.
And I think that I'm not
Because we
saying this
weren't
as
back
a
then.
financial expert.
Yeah.
I think we need to hit the floor. I
Oh,
think
gotcha.
there has to be the cracks. And I say this not as like any kind of psychological expert.
Right.
Obviously, I'm just a human being, but my own experience teaches me that the floor is the most sobering way
Oh,
to
yeah.
start again. Like you
The
can't
hitting
start
of the
again.
bottom. Yeah.
It's the Fight Club theory.
Okay.
Again, like let's not get into like Fight Club's like absurd messages of masculinity and all that. There's messages to be had, but the end point is you can't start anything unless something finishes. And the problem is we're not at a point where we can really restart anything because everything is just so. I guess the best way I can say it is stagnated. Like it's almost like a shell around us of just old methods, old ways of going about things, and it's just it's too prevalent to really make any significant change because you have to hit the floor. Like
right.
you don't hit rock bottom until you crash.
Find that bottom. Yeah. Yeah.
And I know it sounds defeatist. I mean, I don't think it's defeatist at all. I think it's hopeful because we can recover from hitting the floor.
Right, because once you hit bottom, the only way to go is up. Like there's no,
right.
Yeah, because it's the bottom.
I mean, I see it as realistic. Like that's my way of putting it. And I think maybe seeing it from the lens of like someone who grew up in an era where, everything wasn't as clear cut. I think I can see a bigger picture idea of it where, you can thrive after something like this. You can like snap back. It's just a matter of like putting your foot to the ground and keep moving. Like maybe that's what the movies of the age taught me. Maybe that's what the music taught me. I can't say for certain, but I think the thing is people need to see what the bottom's like in order for us to really start thriving again as a country.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, not a lot of people have, I think, who are participating in excess have experienced like that low point, that bottoming out, that like, oh crap, those moments. And like, I mean, I guess in some ways it's also the elder millennials and a little bit of Gen X too, because like some people were pretty young in 2008 where like it didn't really affect them. I'm like, I was early 20s, so, and going to grad school, so I had no money already, so like to be like, oh, everyone doesn't have any money, we're all good then, like fine,
start from zero.
Yeah,
or something like that.
We started from negative 20, like we're good. Yeah,
I think that's like the best message, and I think it's something that I don't know if it's prevalent in the 90s, but like I think the idea of like the underdog, I can say that the underdog rising from above, I think probably states really well the idea of coming back from adversity. I think that's kind of one of the main messages the media always put forth in the 90s was thriving after you've hit the ground. Like never let
never let them see you cry, and you can always turn this around. Yeah,
I think the message has to be now.
Excuse you.
I think that there was a downside to it though, and that is that you have to hit the floor.
Yeah.
I think the downside to that whole idea is you have to hit the floor, but you have to hit the floor first. Like you have to take the responsibility of just like, I'm going to crash.
Yeah.
It's just like it's bracing for the fall. Like nothing's going to prepare you for it. And I'm speaking as I'm going to throw this out there because this is the only way I can say it. I'm talking as a former destructive alcoholic. I hit the floor,
right, and
smashed,
addiction
at one point.
Like there's a floor, there's an absolute bottom.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, you can thrive after that.
Yeah.
There is a way to thread it. Now, I don't think there's enough stories that I really hate saying this. Like, there's too many stories of like the over Christianized
Oh yeah, God.
idea of like you need religion and all that. I think what's a better message is that you have to find your own internal fire. That's something I don't like about like some recovery programs is that it relies so much on the idea of throwing yourself to another god. But the problem is like as soon as you lose that kind of tether, like a lot of people just regress back. I think what needs to be taught, and I think what needs to be taught in general, which I have a distinct impression that the '90s somehow threw in, is that you need the skin to be able to handle destruction. Like you need to be able to handle the fall and the fallout, because that alone is going to save you, especially when it comes to like the era we're living in now. And I know I'm going off on a tangent, but at this point, like it feels like the '90s, like the message we're having right now with McHammer and everything is that these people all crashed and hard, and a lot of it wasn't even their own fault.
Yeah.
But they thrived through it. They fought with it. And I think those stories are the ones that need to be told most.
Right. Yeah.
And again, I think the mission statement for this was like that. Oh, it's so cool, but now it's not. Like, why?
Right, exactly. Why can't there still be fans? Why can't there be, you know? And I'm like, I think he's just kind of a normal dude, like, you know, like playing out his life in Oakland, you know, like he's just going around, you know.
And right now he's a guy in Florida with like a thriving real estate business as well as a thriving a small underground music scene, and like just he's thriving as just a person and an artist outside of that entire environment, and he learned from it and just got better because of it.
Right, and I feel like that's I think we might have talked about this like the first time where like success means different things to different people, and like sometimes like people like McHammer, it would have been very easy for him to like have nothing and just like suffered, you know, and then just that's it. But it sounds to me like now I consider, you know, like someone having very consistent successes to be successful, because like then there really isn't a bottom. It's just consistent, you know? And so like consistently finding, you know, underground artists to support, that's awesome, you know? And like if it brings in a little bit of money, but you have 10 of those like artists who you truly believe in, that's success, you know? Like, I don't know if we really should be encouraging people to be like, you know, get to age 25, have $2 million. That's it. You know, like, because you internet famous or something or other, you know, one hit wonder. You're good then. Like, there's no other problem. You know, like, you'll just live the rest of your life out doing whatever, you know, and like, you know, not teaching people like financial literacy and making sure that like, hey, you know, maybe now that you've experienced this, you can figure out what the next step is for you to have consistent like success instead of just one thing.
Yeah, so this comes into something that I've seen. Like I was looking at interviews with these artists, and like something that came up a lot. The whole prevalent idea throughout the '90s, and I think everyone will remember this. Like all the artists saying, "Stay in school. You'll thrive. You'll stay in there." Like half of these people dropped out of school or never even attended it at any point.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah, like 2/3 of the artists that we know aren't like college educated, or they're college educated. It was after the fact.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
But again, I'm not saying like you need to be ignorant to be famous. That's obviously not the case.
Not the thing. Yeah.
I think the message has to be from the '90s is that you need to look between the lines.
Yeah.
I think that's the strongest message out of the '90s. I think in general, but like I think the '90s screams this to a certain degree, in that we need to like not give credence to what we're told and look as hard as we can at the messages that were really being told. Because I mean, realistically, the real message that we got from Vanilla Ice during the '90s was, here's what we think you want to be, and here's what we're going to give you in these small doses.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the
Um,
way I see it now.
yeah. Well, I'm like, sorry, like, oh my gosh, I just had a couple of things that I was gonna talk about. Oh yeah, the reading between the lines, like, they probably understood on some level how lucky they were, how fortunate they were to like get to that point. So they're like, listen, you're probably not gonna get here. Like, this is a very rare thing. So like, stay in school so that you do, yes, so that you do have something very, like to fall back on if this doesn't work out. It just happened to work out for these people. And then also, like, yeah, like some of them getting uh, uh, college degrees afterward. And there's so many examples of that. The other thing that I'm like, I'm going to get on my soapbox about this is I don't agree with people like, okay, so for some entry level jobs, right, you have to have your high school diploma or a GED.
Yep.
Which I'm like, okay, imagine that you're like 16, troubled life, like maybe got into drugs, maybe went to jail, whatever it is, like you did not finish high school. So now you're a 50-year-old. You have plenty of experience. You have plenty of things that you've done in your life to prove that you know math and, that you can like get by with the science understanding that you have. And like, maybe you haven't read a book in like forever, but like it's not a part of your life. Maybe you have a family, maybe, like, yeah, maybe it's probably most likely you probably have a family. That like, that's not a, like you're focused on other things, and maybe even caretaking or whatever. And so now, like at 50, you can't get a better job than like possibly entry level because when you were 16, things were fucked up. And you didn't like get your GED, and it just didn't seem important, and things, like you got busy with life, and like now it's like, well, that's important. Why the fuck is that important? Like, at some level, it should just be like, off the table. Like, no, you've lived life. We don't need that high school diploma or GED.
Well, at this precise moment, like looking at like what I know of, like the I'm just gonna say the mass scheme of like college schools,
Yeah.
like in perpetuity, and what I know of public education and education in general, I'm starting to see less and less that degree means anything other than just it being a piece of paper that says by state standards, which at this point means next to nothing.
Next to nothing. Yeah.
Yeah, so I completely agree with you. Like, it should matter on merits and your own, like, not only experience, but just capabilities. Because at this point, the idea of, like, oh, you need a college degree, but I don't have experience. Oh, I have experience, but not a college degree. It's hypocritical, and it's detrimental now to a country that, quite frankly, like, we're starting to see, like, just how futile a college degree really is.
Yeah.
Because, like, obviously there's careers that need it, and if you're going to go for those careers, absolutely you need to be in college for that.
Because you already know that that's what you need for that career and that degree. Yeah, like it's
going to be an investment, and yes, it needs to cost money. But that said, if you're just unsure about things and you're going because mom and dad said you need it,
or because you think
I think that's the worst decision you can make, because it's not only going to waste time and money, it's going to waste your life.
Yeah.
Like, it's going to waste years of you, like, trying to fit into some degree that you'll never understand and getting bombarded with information that, I mean, I'm going to be generous and say is above your head.
Right.
Now, that's not to say people aren't intelligent. I'm just saying the stuff that you would need to get a college degree in just anything that you think you want is some of the most difficult and convoluted information possible. And it's also delivered a lot of times in ways that just aren't very intuitive.
No. So I'm like, well, coming from a person who has 3 degrees, yes, I agree. Like, I tell people this all the time. Like, it's okay if college isn't for you. Like, it doesn't make you any less smart, intelligent. Like, yeah, you should probably get a good job, even without a high or college degree. But like, the college degree matters to some people. I think that it's a racket too. Um, my my degrees, it causes a lot of headaches. Um, so my first master's is in art therapy, and that is a whole shit show. It's like it's disappointing, and it's a shit show. Um, I have had my degree for 11 years now, and 2019, so 3 years ago, was the first time that they had a license for art therapy in Connecticut. I was told and lied to that there was a license for art therapy. Once I got into the field, they're like, no, 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 you just have to pay for recognition that you did everything that would be kind of like required for a license, but it's not actually a license. It's just a recognition in the field. Like, fuck you guys. Like, how the fuck? And then I had to go back for more school.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm like, it's a racket. It's a racket, and like I know that other people have just been like, but how would they have not gotten more money from you if if they didn't fuck you over the first time? And I'm like, yeah, you're right. You're right. Like, they got more money out of me because I had to go to a college that was a certified counseling program. And my school wasn't at the time, so that's great. Didn't know that either. Got totally screwed over. And like had to pay another $20,000 for a second master's so that I could be like, and I have a master's in mental health counseling. Yeah. And meet the requirements for licensures in a bunch of other states. It's ridiculous. It's just a money machine. They want my money. They think that I make money, so they're like, hey, did you make any money? Yeah, I should have it. And then there's like a bunch of other stuff too, where it's just like I'm hit up all the fucking time for like just basically for people who want money. They're like, oh, we can make your webpage have better SEO. I don't fucking need more SEO. If I was in any sort of panic about like having new clients, SEO is not going to help me. That doesn't help. Like, SEO doesn't mean butts in the chair. And let's see, there's other stuff like there's a bunch of these programs, and I'm like, I'm just gonna go off. There's a bunch of these programs recently where they're like, hey, we're gonna be a middleman to do your billing so that you can just focus on your clients. And it sounds great, but you do have to pay them. And it's like, so you're taking some of my money because you are helping me bill people. I'm good. And that's like everything. That's everything. It's that, yeah, that's everything. Oh, yeah. So yeah, it's a racket, and it doesn't, like, not all people should go for it. I no one could convince me out of being an art therapist, so that's how I ended up here.
Yeah, I think everything you just said pretty much describes exactly why this kind of issue like needs to be addressed, not just in the small term, just in every term possible.
In every term possible. And like my biggest concern, and this is going to be controversial, my biggest concern about making college free, one is if you don't address the college debt, then you have a bunch of people who are going to be fucking pissed off that like they had to pay for college and no one else, and you know, now the next generation doesn't. And two, that you are going to have people forced to go to college because it's the next thing, you know, like, oh, but that's something you have to do now. It's free. Just go. You should just go. And like, there are people who don't need it. And I'm like, ultra controversial statement. Like, all of this is just white supremacy bullshit. It's just meant to like make you jump through hoops and to see how many hoops you can jump through, and to skew your like point of view. And I don't mean as to like liberal or conservative. I mean that like my perspective is, and I mean the facts are that like a lot of people who drop out of high school are the Latinx and Black community, and it's because they're not really learning anything about themselves. And like, I, fortunate enough, grew up in California where you can't tell the history of California without diversity. There's no way to be like, oh no, Chinese never came here, Japanese never came here, Germans were never discriminated against. The Zoot Suit riots, no, that never happened. Father Sierra, oh, that guy, like the whole story is filled with diversity. However,
I think that whole thing stemmed from just like trying to sugarcoat what happened back then. Because
yes,
I mean that's the thing is like the history textbooks are all written by people with very skewed perspectives, and unfortunately, I don't think we're ever gonna get like a clear picture of that. Like even nowadays with like the internet, like we're still getting like skewed like perspectives on it. So I think right now, like we had like black and white history, and even then it was iffy, and now like history is about as gray as you can possibly make it.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing is that, like, so my husband grew up in Connecticut, and, like, I'll ask him things and be like, so you didn't learn about, like, the local tribes? You didn't learn about, like, this stuff? You didn't learn about this topic? What did you learn about? Because I'll just be like, I mean, here's this thing that happened. Oh, I didn't know about that. I'm like, I don't, this seems like this should have been taught to you at some point.
Oh yeah, no, I'll be the first to call out like public education, especially when it comes to like the curriculums, because like and I've said this before, like the entirety of like curriculums are based off of like livestock algorithms and just like breeding patterns, and it's just they're meant to create workers.
Yes,
like,
they're meant to create workers.
They're meant to create a line of docile workers. They're not meant to create live, viable human beings. Like it's the Dune argument. Like you're either an animal or you're a human, and to be brutally honest, like I think we have a generation that's like I would say the internet is probably one of the best things because it's helped broaden people's perspectives outside of the normal like educational curriculum. Sure. That said, I still think there needs to be more wisdom balanced out with it, but I still think that it's probably the best way. Like I think that right now the current trend of homeschooling and pushing away from like the public education kind of environment. Mm-hmm. Like, it's detrimental to a number of people that I know who work in it, and I apologize for that. But I also think it's a system that's needed some kind of counterbalance or differentiating factor for a while now. And I think right now we're seeing just how toxic, like, just in general, just how toxic this environment has become.
Yes.
And I think the consequences of that are now people do not want public education taught the way they think, like because it's obvious it's not what they want taught to their children, and it doesn't matter if you're right wing, left wing, or any of that.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Yeah,
it's completely irrelevant. Your children are being taught things that, quite frankly, you may not agree with, and you won't know that because guess what? Everything is so hidden behind red tape and all this other stuff that is just And again, the 90s, I think, was just
school. Like they could have a handout in school for something in like classwork, and you wouldn't necessarily know what they were being asked. And I mean, kids aren't very expressive. They're not coming home and being like, I filled out a piece of paper that said that I accept or don't accept gay people or climate change, or something where you're like, wait a second, I probably should have like kind of known about that on some level.
Yeah, like I don't know, like this is like there's a level of like what's going on in public education. Then again, like I think right now there's a lot that's becoming fluxed because of just the changing viewpoints of people, and I'm kind of happy about it because we're getting a much grander perspectives on things, and I think it's also showing the cracks in the armor of what the country is should have gotten fixed a long time ago.
Right.
Like, I think we could have fixed all this in the 90s if we had just paid attention to things, but we didn't, and now we're seeing I think the best argument I can say is, well, in the 90s, that's future country's problem. Well, now it's the future, and it's bad. Like, it's going to be future country's problem. No.
Yeah.
No. The problem is right now. Like, have you looked outside?
Yeah.
This is a problem.
Do we know? Yeah, we know. We know what's going on. Yeah.
You can't keep ignoring it.
Nope.
Like, you can put your head in the sand only so long before you just, like, start dying from the heat stroke of being in the ground.
Yep.
And then you're
Yeah.
gonna die from heat stroke outside because the heat is goddamn unbearable.
Oh gosh, yes, yes it is.
And this room doesn't have air conditioning.
Oh no.
I have a fan, so I'm at least happy about that.
Yeah, I'm also in a room without air conditioning, and I'm like, I have my little fan. Like that's you know, like I know sometimes when I record YouTube videos, they'll be like, oh, there's like a little bit of like a noise, and I'm like, if there's a little bit of a noise on my end, it's because there is a fan that I need, you know, to survive. Yeah.
But yeah, like I think we've proven that this is definitely tangent the podcast, but I'm okay with that.
Yes. Yes.
But that said, I think we said a lot that, quite frankly, needed to be said on a lot of terms because, I mean, let's face it, the 90s was the root of all this, and it's not going to stop being the root of like where we can get perspective on everything. Like I said, the decade was about excess, and I think it's kind of the stepping stone of where we can see a lot of the issues of now kind of start coalescing and thriving.
Right, and there are like direct correlations where it's like, oh shit, oh yep. I mean that not wrong, you know. Like Biden's was supportive of a stop and frisk law in the 90s, and I think at that point probably even with Hillary Clinton used Super Predator or something like that.
Super PAC.
Super PAC.
Yeah, I think you're talking about like the privatized money that they get in certain ways. That
no, like, this was like demonizing like the Black community.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that's why I was like, it's super something, and it's awful, obviously, to have any derogatory words, obviously, like that put together for the Black community.
Well, I mean, there's a lot that the government has done in that regard, so let's not even pretend like there's like there's a lot of things like. I think nowadays there's a lot of stuff going on that the government has to answer for, but I mean,
and this is one of them because like there's the direct correlation between like Biden and this law from the 90s that was like, yeah, so that was used eventually to discriminate against Black people and like the Latinx community, like yeah, in practice that's what happened. Well, can't I mean, it's right there. I can't.
Well, I mean, unfortunately, there's people don't want to hear it, because the media is like kind of doing it, like it's performing their usual mental gymnastics, and unfortunately, it's also just the malaise of like the world right now. I think is just
definitely.
Well, it's also just a flood of information. Everyone's just, I think, just burnt down. I think that was.
Oh yeah.
I mean, me personally, I think that was kind of the idea, is that they're trying to burn people out in information.
Yes.
So
yeah, and that's true, because like I mean, I feel guilt for being like I can't answer my phone or look up, like news articles or anything while I'm, in session. And like there are some days where I'm like, well, I had 30 minutes to eat, and then I caught a train home and I was mentally exhausted, so I just played a game, or I, read something for work, maybe listen to a podcast, and got home. That's it. That's what I did. Yeah.
I like I said, I think the problem is just there's not enough. I think there's too much information going about, and it's too just malaise.
And all of it is really interesting, but like also like it's just like I don't have the time and the mental labor, the capacity, just like I don't want to be miserable all the time. Like I want to see some good, and sometimes that can be very, very tough to find when you're like, okay, so this political thing, shit.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I don't disagree at all.
Yeah. Like I think both of us are kind of tired just from the heat wave and everything. So I'm like, I mean, very different from the first time.
Well, I mean, we still caught up on these tangents before. Yeah. I think the difference now is just, I mean, in terms of talking about it, like McHammer, we can go on and on about him like being like a thriving businessman and everything. But I think again, like we have to look at it. We have to look at it from like not only like a lens of just like strictly 90s
Right.
nostalgia, but just also look at it from the context of from where we are. And I think you can't do that without looking at the current spectrum of things.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's the idea, is that right now the current state of things is very, very mixed and very clouded. I think is probably the most polite way I can say it. And the thing is, I think looking back at the 90s where it had like this clarity of vision and just, I almost want to say naivete, but
Right. Yeah.
it's weird
It
to say
was.
naivete when it comes to the 90s, but it really was.
It really was. It really was. Like, I think there was, yeah, just a lot of like, it wasn't even ignorance. We really didn't know. Like, yeah.
Yeah, and I think just without we're regressing to remember is just remembering where we are, but also remembering where we came from.
Yes.
And I think looking at like artists and like the time frames and everything, and looking at the context of those things, and then coming back to where we are now and seeing where we've grown, I think that's probably the most important thing, on top of seeing socially how it all like gets thrown together.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. I'm like, all right, well, I think we've reached kind of our conclusion. We usually go longer, but I think we're just kind of like, I mean, we already talked about this before, and I don't know.
It's also like humid as hell, and like I know it's like 90 degrees, like was it 90 degrees outside right now, but it's also like it's bordering on like really like stuffy weather, and unfortunately, just I think both of us are just burnt.
Yeah, yeah. I'm literally burnt. I went, as I said, went out with my friends yesterday, and I'm like I have a high likelihood of getting skin cancer, and I should not have any burns. But I did get like I did get burnt yesterday. I got sunburned.
Oh yeah, no, I'm the same way. I was barely outside in a short sleeve shirt, and I got burned.
Oh man. Yeah. So yeah, I think both of us are just kind of like, okay, I think we're good for now.
I think once we get a week, I think once we get a week of either solid sleep or a month or a week to like really
just
get a better understanding of things, I think we'll be better off.
Oh yeah. I think we'll be good next week. Yeah.
So do we want to try Sailor Moon again?
Yes, we will try Sailor Moon again. I definitely have. I think I got it down where I'm like, all right, I got the stream key, I got the video of it, and I did make sure that we were live. My friend Tom, who lives in St. Louis, was able to make comments on the live. He talked about like NWA and he talked about he said Master P was a wave in St. Louis. I look back now and think it's garbage. Eminem, I look back and think it's garbage. He said that the explicit lyrics label made people want to buy stuff, and Notice, Arrest Development, Tribe Called Quest, Diggable Planets, De La Soul were never involved in any of like the what was it, the parental music resource center, right?
The PMRC.
Yeah, the PMRC, and he was like, I never really liked NWA or gangster rap anyway. So that was those were the comments that Thomas made. Which I'm like, I mean, kind of wish I got them earlier, like before. Like I went to go check, and it was like it had already been 15 minutes since he had said it. And I'm like, oh, I guess he like logged off and like didn't watch the rest of it. But I'm like, all right, well, we have people trying. I will try and keep better which we'll call it, not understanding, but like better updates on that for hopefully next time.
I mean, this is also the thoughts of like two individuals, so like expect there to be like a lot of like I'm not going to be an expert on any of the things that I've said. This is just my experience on things, so I'm going to maintain that like what I'm saying is, again, could be completely wrong and invalid, but like going off of like really just the the trend of things and just seeing like what's going on, like this is how I perceive things, and if you want to hold it against me, cool, fight me in a corner.
Right. Yeah, I'm like,
don't fight me in a corner, please.
I'm also not an expert. This is just something that it's like I have experience, I guess, in some level with this, and that's it. Yeah.
So
anyway, yes. I think we're at a stopping point, so I'm gonna stop, and then we'll talk about our scheduling for next week. So, all right,
Yep.
guys, thanks for coming and watching and responding. Obviously, Tom, and we'll see you next week sometime.
Yep. See you.
Right.
Enjoy the
enjoy
the humidity.
Yeah, enjoy something.
Please enjoy something.
Yes,
That's
just
all we
enjoy
ask.
something this week. All right, we'll talk to you guys. All right.